Okay, so for this deep dive, we're going deep on a what-if scenario, like a total system failure.
Yeah, a thought experiment, you could call it.
You did this in Chronomancers of Oblivion, right? It's not your typical alien invasion story, like no death rays or anything like that.
No, no,
Oh.
this is about what happens when the underpinnings of our world, the global economy,
Just vanishes.
exactly,
Hmm.
just evaporates. It's more like a controlled demolition, like what happens if the engine of the world just stops.
And what makes it even more unsettling is it's not some accident or natural disaster, right? It's deliberate.
Oh yeah, it's very intentional.
So for this deep dive, we've got excerpts from the story, and we're going to try to break it down. Like what are the key phases of this collapse, and what might it mean for us? If something like this hypothetically were to happen, what does this tell us about how people might react?
Right, like how resilient are we really?
Exactly. Okay, so let's start with the arrival. The Chronomancer's ship shows up, and the story describes it in this really bizarre way.
Yeah, it's not your typical flying saucer.
No, it's geometric, shimmering,
Yeah.
almost like it's absorbing time itself, which is a pretty terrifying thought if you think about it.
It really makes you question what kind of technology or intelligence could even create something like that.
Right, and this thing just shows up in orbit while everyone on Earth is going about their day completely oblivious.
I mean, it's like this cosmic level event, but down
Yeah.
here, it's just another Tuesday.
Yeah. I mean, the story really highlights that contrast. But what I find fascinating is the Chronomancer's motivation. They're not here for conquest or resources or any of that usual stuff.
It's not about power or domination.
No, they're driven by this almost detached intellectual curiosity. They see Earth and our global capitalist system as this giant experiment.
Yeah, like a petri dish.
Exactly. And they want to see what happens when they introduce a critical failure.
Like they're testing a hypothesis. It's unsettling because it makes you feel like we're just subjects in their grand experiment.
Right. They're watching us like we're ants in a farm. Okay, so this is where the deep dive really starts to get interesting. How do they actually cause the collapse? What's the trigger?
Well, it starts subtly, you know. First, there's this ripple in time picked up by satellites.
The ripple in time.
Yeah, like a distortion, an anomaly. Scientists don't really know what to make of it.
Okay, that's freaky.
Yeah. And then things start happening. The stock market crashes, but there's no clear reason why.
Yeah, you'd usually expect something like a bank failure or a resource shortage, something to explain it.
Right, but this time, it's different. There's
Yeah.
no obvious trigger. It just collapses.
And of course, that panic spreads like wildfire.
Globally, yeah. Currencies lose value. Governments try to intervene.
But it just makes things worse.
Exactly, like they're pouring gasoline on the fire.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the Chronomancers, they don't actually need to directly intervene. They just manipulate information, exploit vulnerabilities that are already
Back
there.
pushing the system over the edge.
It's a chilling insight into the fragility of our global systems, how perception and trust play such a huge role.
So the markets crash, currencies plummet. What happens next?
Well, the story describes this rapid cascading effect, like a chain reaction. Inflation skyrockets. Basic necessities become unaffordable.
People are struggling to survive.
Absolutely. You see widespread protests, people demanding food, water, basic necessities.
And how do governments respond?
Some with aid programs, some with crackdowns, increased security curfews, martial law in some places.
So basically, it's chaos.
In many parts of the world, yes.
Yeah.
The story paints a bleak picture of social order breaking down, and the Chronomancers are watching it all unfold, studying our every reaction. How we deal with loss, with insecurity.
So it's not enough that they've destroyed our economy. They're analyzing our suffering, too.
Yeah, it's pretty cold, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that their observations don't always match their expectations. Well, for example, they anticipated a complete societal collapse, everyone for themselves. But what they see instead is, well, it's more complex than that.
Like, how? Give me an example.
Sure. You see the rise of black markets, but also the emergence of these new communities based on cooperation and sharing.
So it's not just about every man for himself.
No, people are also coming together to help each other. And you see this on a larger scale, too. Rival nations start cooperating out of necessity, sharing resources, forming alliances.
That's interesting. So there's this unexpected resilience, even in the face of utter chaos.
Exactly. It seems like the Chronomancers underestimated the human capacity for adaptation, for finding a way to survive, even thrive, under extreme pressure.
But then They take their experiment to a whole new level. They start manipulating the past.
Yeah, this is where the story gets really mind-bending.
Like, how do they even do that?
It's not explained in detail, but it involves their advanced technology, their understanding of time. They make subtle changes to the past, and those changes ripple into the present, altering history.
So it's not just that the financial system collapsed. It's like it was always meant to collapse.
Right. People's memories become unreliable. They start questioning their sanity, their understanding of reality.
That's terrifying to have your past, your memories, everything you thought was real, suddenly become fluid and uncertain.
It's a profound form of disorientation. And within this temporal chaos, a few individuals start to perceive the truth. They can sense that something is fundamentally wrong with time itself. They form a scattered resistance, connected by this unexplainable mental link.
Like they can see through the Chronomancers' manipulations.
In a way, yeah, it's like they have this innate sense that something isn't right. It's a small glimmer of hope in this otherwise bleak scenario.
Okay, so fast forward a few months. The world is in ruins. Cities are devastated. There's despair everywhere. But
Then something unexpected happens.
What?
People start to rebuild. Not the same way as before, but differently. They create new communities based on cooperation, shared resources, a simpler way of life. They've rejected the old system, the one that failed them.
That's amazing. And what did the Chronomancers think of this?
They're surprised. They underestimated human resilience, our ability to adapt and create something new out of the ashes. Even with their advanced technology, their ability to manipulate time, they couldn't predict this.
So they've learned something from us.
You could say that.
Right.
But then they decide their experiment is over and they leave, just as suddenly as they arrived.
And that's it. They just leave us to clean up the mess they made.
Well, not exactly. They leave behind a message, a final message. They acknowledge our resilience, our fall and rise, but they also promise to return. We are always watching, and we will return. That's what they say.
That's ominous.
Yeah, it leaves you with this feeling of unease, like we're still being observed, judged even.
And what happens to the world after they leave?
The story focuses on the years that follow. The world slowly rebuilds, but the scars of the collapse remain. New systems emerge, new ways of life. But the memory of what happened, the knowledge that we were manipulated, that our reality was tampered with, it hangs over everything.
It's a heavy thought. That even if we survive, even if we rebuild, we're still marked by the experience.
And the story ends with the Chronomancers still out there, watching. They're wondering if we'll truly learn from this experience, or if we'll eventually fall back into the same patterns that led to the collapse in the first place.
So this whole story, this Chronomancers of Oblivion, it's a pretty bleak outlook, isn't it?
It's definitely thought-provoking. It makes you question our own systems, our own resilience. It shows how fragile things can be, how easily our world can be turned upside down.
But it also shows that even in the face of utter chaos, there's hope. Humans can adapt, we can find new ways to survive and even thrive.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what would we do differently if we knew we were being watched? If we knew that our every action, every choice was being observed and analyzed by some advanced intelligence?
That's a pretty heavy question to end on. I mean, it makes you really think about what matters, what choices we're making, not just as individuals, but as a species.
It does. It makes you consider the long-term consequences of our actions, the legacy we're leaving behind.
Well, that was quite a deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
And for everyone listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you take away from Chronomancers of Oblivion? What aspects of our own world do you think are most vulnerable? And what does our fictional resilience suggest about our real potential for change?
We're all in this experiment together, whether we realize it or not. So let's make it count.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive. Until then, keep exploring.